everyone. In today's session, we will understand what is SCD type 2 and how we can implement this using the Azure Data Factory. In our previous session, we have already understood the concept of SCD type 1 and we have implemented the SCD type 1 using the Azure Data Factory with an example. Here I will take the same example, but the concept will be different. How we are storing the data into the employee dimension table, that will be different as compared to the SCD type 1. So here I am taking the example of the employee table. This is the employee table in my source data set, and I have a employee dimension in my employee dimension table. In the employee table, I have 5 columns like employee name, employee number, employee name, department, city, last modified date. And in the employee dimension table, I have also the same columns, employee number, name, department, city, and last modified date. Along with these columns, I have the employee SID and is active. Employee SID is a surrogate key, that is the auto-generate number. This key we will be using while referring to the fact table when we are doing any transaction data load. So this dimension table will be referred to our fact table. That time we will use the employee SID as our primary key. And is active is a column which will help us to identify which records are active or which dimensions are active. So how we will update these records and what will be the value in this field, that I will explain while giving you the example. Here I have records of employee Ramit and Seetal in the source data set. These two records are there, and in my dimension table I don't have any record. So when I will execute the perform the data load on 1st of September, I will receive these two records, and these two records will be processed for my incremental data load. As we know that all these ETL data load follows incremental data load, so these two will move to the next step, and these two are the new records. They are not present in the dimension table, so automatically these two will be inserted to the dimension table as it is, and my employee SID column will be auto-generate. These are the auto-generate numbers. By default, the is active value will be 1 for any new records. Whenever the is active value is 1, that means that particular record is active. So let's see if we are getting any new record along with the changed dimension, how we will proceed with loading the data into our employee dimension table. So here let's insert one more record. Daily, then the date is 1st of September, and along with this new record, let me change these records. And the date will be changed to the 1st of September. Now this data will be loaded to the dimension table in the next execution, that is on the 2nd of September. So as per the incremental data load, these records will move to the next step, and we will see how these records will be inserted to our employee dimension. When we will load the data to the employee dimension, first it will check if these records are already present or it is a new record. How it will check? It will check using the employee number. So if the particular employee number is not present, that means it's a new record. So it will be inserted to the table. So this record is a new record. So this record will be inserted as it is, and the isActive value will be 1, and it will have a auto-generate employee SID, that is 3. For these two records, how it will insert into the table, as these two values, these two employee numbers are already present. So what it happens in a SCD type 2, whenever any data changed, we will take the change record as a new entry, and we will do the old records for these two employee number, we will make them inactive. So these two will be inserted to the table as a new records. So as these are inserting as new records, the isActive value will be 1 for both, and they will have new employee SID like this, and the old employee SID will be inactive. So here the isActive will be 0. So this is how we used to implement the SCD type 2. Now for 3 records, we have 5 records in our employee dimension. We have the new records and the historical data also. And when we are referring to any fact table, we will do any fact data load, that time this employee dimension will be joined or referred to the fact table using the employee SID column, because now the employee number is no more a primary key. That time we will use the employee SID as a key column, and will filter the isActive value in our filter condition while referring to the fact table. So this is all about the SCD type 2. SCD type 2 means keeping the historical data, and SCD type 1 is not keeping the historical data. So whether we choose SCD type 1 or SCD type 2, it's all depend on the business requirement. If business says, I want to see for the employee Ramit, what he was belongs to which department in the month of August, so he can refer to this historical data. If he wants to see for the employee Ramit, the city for the which department he belongs to from the September month, so he can refer to the new records. So if the business wants to he is not interested to keep the historical data, he only wants to see the new data or the updated data, then we can choose the SCD type 1. So this is all about the SCD type 1 and SCD type 2. Apart from these two, we have a SCD type 3 also, which we use very rare. So let's see how we can implement this SCD type 2 using the Azure Data Factory. I will show you how we can create a Azure Data Factory pipeline to implement the SCD type 2. Before that, let me show you the dimension table in the database. So this is the dimension table dim employee in the database, and we have no records in the dimension table now. And in the, let me show you from the storage account where we are keeping the source data set, that is the CSV file. This is the employee CSV file, and these two are the records, the new record, the first two records, which will be loaded in the first load. So this is, if to implement the SCD type 2, I have created this pipeline. I will explain you what are the activities and transformations I have used to implement the SCD type 2 data load. So in the activities, I have taken the data mapping data flow. In the mapping data flow, this is the data flow design. So here I have taken many sources, and I have used many transformations. Then I am loading the data into the sync table. So let me show you what are the sources we are using. The first source is the staging data set, that is the employee storage, that is the source employee table, which is our CSV file. That is the first data source we are using. And apart from this source data set, we are taking two more data sets. One is the employee dimension, and this employee dimension is the same dimension table to which we will load the data. And this employee dimension we will be using as a reference to check whether the data coming from the source is a new record or an existing record. And after this employee dimension, I am taking a select transformation. When we will click on this plus sign, we can see many transformations here. And from these transformations, I have selected the select transformations. So this is the select transformation. And in this select transformation, I'm just renaming the column names which are coming from the employee dimension, so that we will easily distinguish between the columns coming from the CSV file and the columns coming from the employee dimension. Apart from this source, we have one more source, that is the max key. Here in the max key, I am using the employee dimension as my data set. And here in the source option, instead of taking the table, we are taking a query, a select query. We are taking the maximum of employee SID from the employee dimension table and renaming it as a max key. And how we will use this max key and where we will use while implementing the SCD type 2, we will explain you step by step. Let me show you what we are doing when the data is coming from the CSV file. This is the CSV file data store, and once the this is the CSV file data store, and after this CSV file data store, I am using a join where I am joining the source data store, that is the CSV file, with the max key. And while joining, I am using the cross join, and the condition is any true condition, 1 equal to true, 1 equal to 1, or true, anything you can keep in the condition. In the join, I am using the cross join, so it will just append the max key at the last as the last column, which all columns data we are getting from the CSV file. As we know, in the max key dataset we have only one record. After I have joined the source dataset and the max key, I am using a lookup transformation. In the lookup transformation, I am joining the data coming from the CSV file and the select dataset. As you remember, this is the select dataset. This select dataset is nothing but our employee dimension, that is the reference table. So here the whatever data we are getting from the CSV file, I am just doing a lookup with the dimension table using a key column, that is the employee number, so that it will be easy for us to identify which one is the new record and which one is the existing record. As we know, when we are performing any lookup, it by default do the left join. So like we know the left join in SQL, all the records from left table will be there in our result, along with all the records from the right table will be there, which are satisfying the joining condition. If any record is present in the left table but not present in the right table, then the left table record will come, and along with the columns from right table will have null values. So here also all the records from the CSV file will come, or any record which is not present in dimension table but present in the CSV file, for them the dimension table columns will have null values. After doing the lookup, I am using a conditional split. In the conditional split, we'll divide those records into two sets. One is new, one is exist, using the condition where the employee number coming from dimension table is null. That means if any record is present in the CSV file but not present in the employee dimension table, that is a new record, that we will understand as a new record. So that will be one set, and other records which are present in both CSV file and employee dimension, that we will consider as existing records. So here we are dividing the two records into two sets. This side we are moving all the new records, and this side we are keeping the existing records. Then what happens to the new records? Let's see what happens to the new records first. After dividing those records, I am using a derived column. In the derived column, as we have seen here, for the column is active, for any new record or any new insert, we are taking the is active as 1, the default value. So in this derived column, I am keeping the default value as 1 and giving it to a name. Then I am inserting those records in my sync table. In the sync table, we are using the dataset employee dimension table. In the settings, I am selecting allow insert. In the mapping, we are mapping all the columns, the columns coming from the CSV file, and inserting into the sync table. So this is how we are inserting the new records coming from the source CSV file. So let's see this functionality is working fine or not by executing this pipeline. After executing the pipeline, we will again change the data in the CSV file. Then I will explain what happens to the exist branch and what are the logic we are implementing in this exist branch. So let's execute this pipeline. Let me trigger the pipeline. Trigger now. Okay. So the pipeline execution is started. We can monitor the execution in the monitor tab. Here we can refresh and see the status. The status is in progress. So it will take some time to be completed. The data load is completed. Let's see if the data is loaded to the dimension table. Here the new records are inserted to the dimension table. This is the part 1 of the SCD type 2. In the part 2 video, I will explain the logic for this existing records and what happens to the existing record, how we will create new entries for the existing records and make the is inactive as 0 in the existing records. That we will explain in the part 2 video.